Welcome to Authors Revealed. I'm Becky Anderson. I'm so excited. I have one of my favorite debut novelists with his new book. It's J. Ryan Stradal, Kitchens of the Great Midwest. This book will make you drool. Well, J. Ryan, welcome to Anderson's and to Naperville.
Hi, it's great to be here.
No, it's great to talk about this book because this is a book that I won't be able to stop talking to people about.
Wow.
It is one of those people that I read through it so quickly because it was from page word word one to the last word in this book. It was such a pleasure. It was just a wonderful reading experience. So this is going to be a really favorite hand sell for us. So,
thank you.
So I want to know what you're thinking. This book has only been out literally about 3 days.
Yeah,
It's been out in this world, this baby that you have.
Yeah.
And you have been on the other side of publishing, on the other side of the book and the author,
Yes.
in acquisitions and editing and all that. So what is
Yeah.
it like now having your debut novel out in the world?
It's surreal.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really heady.
Yeah.
I'm pinching myself quite a bit. I mean, this is what I've always wanted to do. I set out to be a book editor, even though I've been doing that. Always wanted to be a novelist, and so it's very amazing, and I feel very grateful for this experience. Every day kind of blows me away to be able to walk into the store and realize I'm not just here as a customer.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, bookstores are my favorite places in the world, so be able to come and be a part of it and have a book to just see a book of mine that I wrote that has my name on it. Still, I'm not tired of that.
Yeah, and besides, you've won a pretty cool award, the Faulkner Award.
Yeah,
Tell me about that, because that must have been
wow.
and you won that a few months ago because it was, was it a debut award? So tell us a little about that, because that is way cool.
Yeah, that was quite a process.
Yeah.
I had submitted my manuscript for that when I was about the same time I was submitting to agents, because the rules of that award was the book had to be unpublished.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I had acquired an agent and sold the book. And so I had to write them and say, I might have to recuse myself from this contest.
Right.
And they said, no, it's unpublished.
Because you submitted it before
Yes,
you
exactly.
actually had
Exactly.
gotten the word aside to contract.
Yeah, and it was thrilling. I'd never been to New Orleans before. So that city blew me away. The food is incredible. It reminded me a bit of Midwestern food in terms of the calorie count, but it's absolutely
true.
delicious.
Very true.
Yeah. When I think of the traditional Midwestern food I grew up with, like the hot dishes and so on, and the alacrity to use dairy in as many forms as possible. Lots of butter.
Right.
But yeah, I love the food and the people, and I'm going back on this tour. I'll be there next week for 2 stops in New Orleans, and
Fantastic.
it has everything to do with the fact of winning that award.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So, I asked you before we sat down here, J. Ryan, tell us about the J, because I know
Sure.
there's a family story behind your initial J before Ryan.
I grew up in Minnesota. My dad is 100% Czech, and he had a Czech uncle, Straight Chick Joe. It's Czech for Uncle Joe, who was really close to growing up, and he died shortly before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad wanted to name me Joseph after Straight Chick Joe, and my grandmother, his mom, objected, saying it was not a good idea to name a baby after someone who just died, especially someone so important to you.
Right.
Append those sort of expectations on an infant, or she may have had other reasons too. But my parents, they wanted to obey grandma, but at the same time they wanted to have their way too, and so they came up with J. Period as a shorthand, as a way to honor Joseph without annoying grandma.
Gotcha. So you probably get asked that question constantly, or have over the years, probably why. What does the J stand for, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't believe that it's just J. Period.
No, I get that.
In fact, I had a boss who refused to write the checkout to J. Ryan. Yeah.
You want to spell out J or something,
Yes,
right? Oh,
exactly,
that's so interesting.
Exactly, yeah.
So this book, Kitchens of the Great Midwest, it to me, there were parts where you drool, literally you're drooling when you're reading it, but there's so much to this book. So where did the seeds of the recipe for this book, the ingredients that made this story, where did it start to grow for you?
Wow. I initially set out to write a book that would tell the story of a dinner party and how people at a dinner party met and arrived at this particular location. Certainly as an adult, and weddings, funerals, perhaps other situations, you end up in a room where you realize you know the host or the center of attention, and that's it. You don't know all these other people that also know the host. And I was interested in telling a story of it, narratives leading to that kind of event. But as I started writing, I discovered that I liked the host a lot, and I wanted to tell her story instead. So then I decided to work backwards and work to the dinner party rather than from the dinner party, and not even use the dinner party as a framing device at all, but just end it. And so some people, I think, might interpret the narrative, hopefully without giving too much away.
Right, we don't want to do too many spoilers here.
Right.
This is a book you have to read. Okay, all right.
Yeah. I probably won't explicate further on that, but when I realized that I'm telling the story of a chef, I thought, how can I tell the story of a chef's life? How about in terms of the ingredients that are important to them at the point that she was introduced to those ingredients at various stages of her life, from childhood to adulthood. And so each chapter is the story of Eva Torvald, the chef, being introduced to an ingredient from the point of view of the person who intentionally or otherwise introduces her to that. And that was a lot of fun. It also kept me on a very brisk pace as a writer when I had that kind of structure.
Right. So knowing the structure, because every chapter starts with a recipe or food, and you have the authentic recipe, and I'll ask you a little bit later where those recipes came from, because that's a nice story in itself. But the way food in its structure, did you outline it, or did you have, because this is always interesting, I ask so many authors this, putting an outline or an arc of the story, but knowing that you now know your structure of it, was it easy to fill in, knowing that you had sort of the skeletal sort
Yes.
of? Yeah, okay.
And I don't outline the chapters. I like to discover the story as I write it. I like to write into a story, and I like to create a character and then see what they do.
Yeah.
And just sort of set them free in the world to make mistakes, to make choices.
Yeah, and you had so many great characters in this book
Thanks.
outside of Eva. And the thing is, what's interesting is you tell her story through their points of view and their characters, instead of having her tell the story herself so much, which I thought was just really wonderful, because you're seeing her through different eyes.
Yeah.
And so really just brilliant supporting characters in this were so cool.
Well, thank you.
So is she based on anyone? Eva Tordal, she's this, I'm guessing she's Norwegian. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I come from Swedes on my
Oh, okay.
side with that Anderson thing. But where did she come from? Is she based on anyone you know who's a chef, or anyone in your family, friends, anybody like that?
Yeah, actually, I'm friends with two really wonderful chefs named Patty Clark and Amy Shabert Kovacs, and they, as professionals, inspired Eva. Everything I know about a chef's life, I know from those two women. That's also a big reason why the protagonist happens to be female. When I think of a chef, I think of a woman. Two of my best friends who are chefs are women, and I've observed I knew them both before they were professional chefs. I've seen them grow into the profession and expand and increasingly develop expertise in different realms. And it was really inspirational to me, particularly in the case with Amy, who I've known since I was 14. We went to the same high school in Hastings, Minnesota, and now, she was running a bakery in Minneapolis. It was really wonderful to see someone come from a small town and become a culinary star in a city.
Right.
And so there's a little bit of that in Eva. Eva's personality is a little different. I think in terms of personality, one person that inspired her would be my friend Ann Friedman, who's a really wonderful nonfiction writer. She writes for the New York Magazine. She's also from Iowa. She's from Dubuque. And another story of, another person I think of when I think of someone who came from the Midwest and has, developed a name for herself in her chosen profession. So I really wanted Eva as a character to be self-directed, independent, but also loving and inclusive. Because so often I think we hear stories, I think more often stories of men, but people who rise from nothing to the top. I'm thinking like Citizen Kane, There Will Be Blood, and they just burn bridges along the way. And I really wanted to tell the story of someone who didn't do that.
No, and she's so positive. Even though and we don't, again, no spoilers too much, she goes through a lot, from the time she's born, what she experiences, her mother, well, we'll give a little bit that happens at the beginning, because her mother, Cynthia, who's a sommelier, she sort of leaves her.
Yeah.
But her dad, Lars, what a great character.
Thanks.
I love the food list that he's making he's developing her palate, because he
Yeah.
loves food himself,
Yeah.
which was so wonderful. And that's at the very beginning of the book, so that's not much of a spoiler.
No.
But
Yeah.
but that was, I thought, just so brilliant with all of that. And just to see how she develops. So besides talking to your friends who are very accomplished chefs, did you do much research?
Oh, quite a bit.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that. And there must have been some tasty research
Oh,
in
yeah.
there too.
Yeah,
right?
a lot of it was
Right.
very pleasant. Some more than others.
Yeah,
I
right.
probably won't eat lutefisk anytime soon again. But
Well,
I did buy that.
Well, the lutefisk with that is that you make it, and my dad has a mug where you make it and you throw it out. That's what it says on the mug.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. Yeah, yeah. It's wonderful to have have a tradition, even if it's a little unpalatable.
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, I ate lutefisk a couple years ago. But more fun than that was doing things like going to Minnesota State Fair for the first time in a long time, going to the St. Paul Farmers Market at the exact time that Lars goes to it in chapter 1, and seeing what tomatoes are in season, what fruits and vegetables are in season at that time in August, and being able to kind of report on that for my novel.
Yeah.
I suppose I could have asked a high school friend who lives in Minneapolis to go, but no, I don't think there's any substitute for.
Well, not going to the Minnesota State Fair, you know.
Yeah, and I'm going to go again this year too.
Well, they have incredible. The butter is like a whole. Is it a
they're
horse?
butter sculptures.
Oh,
Yeah,
this
that's
one is
amazing.
huge this year. They just had it on the news.
Really?
I saw it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. And then fried butter on a stick.
Oh,
You
yeah,
got to have anything fried.
I
on
had
a stick.
salad on a stick last time I went there. It was a little disappointing.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to having more foods on sticks and seeing
Good.
what culinary treats they have to offer.
So Minnesota is kind of a character in this.
Oh,
a little
big time.
bit.
Yeah.
So it really, and I think so. Growing up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Why set it in Minnesota, and what is this place where you came from mean to you, and making it a character in this book in a way?
I've often heard that your first book's about your childhood, whether if you want it to be or not. I know I woke up every day I was writing this book wanting to write about the Midwest.
Yeah.
Even though I've lived in Los Angeles for 17 years now, I'm just not interested in writing about it yet.
Yeah.
When I thought about a setting, the first setting I thought of was Minnesota in the Midwest, and I went to Northwestern, so I spent some time in Evanston as well.
Right,
and that's
sure.
That's a setting. But I also sort of felt a need for it as a reader. Like, I want to read more books set in my home region. I mean, there's some great ones.
Yeah.
I really love The Thousand Acres by Jane Smiley, for
Oh,
example. And
yeah.
I like Charles Baxter's new book, A Short Story Collection, that came out earlier this year.
Right.
And but like a lot of writers, I feel like I wrote the book I wanted to exist in the world,
Yeah.
and I really wanted to write a love letter to my home state and home region.
Yeah, and it so shines through on this too. But the thing is, I think in this book is food is such a vehicle in this, and I think it really points out the whole, over the last decade or more, the foodie movement has become so big. I mean,
yeah.
and television, of course,
Oh,
reality
sure.
television with food shows and chefs and everything has become so huge.
Yeah.
But food. What is it about food besides bringing family? You always think of family and
Yeah,
food, but you
yeah.
think of getting together with friends. You think of how it builds community.
Yeah.
You know, even smaller groups, but even on a wider scale. So what do you think about the whole food movement and how that played a role for Eva, for one
Right.
thing, but for this story?
Well, it's a signifier of regionalism in a lot of cases. It's also a signifier of class, and Eva's experience touches on both of those things, where she sees food as a divisive element or as a statement of taste in a way that's not inclusive, in the dinner party that she participates in her 20s. But through her cultural heritage, she also experiences some of the traditions and regionally inflected attitudes towards food. And that's one of the things I also love about the Midwest is I think the Midwest is underrated in that regard in terms of us having a cuisine.
Yeah, right. It's true. It's
yeah.
true. It's sort of like we always talk about skipping over our coasts here.
Yes,
this
I know,
third
I know.
coast and this in the heartland here, that the coasts around the Great Lakes.
Absolutely.
There is. I mean, I think of going to St. Paul and going to Tavern on Grand and having walleye.
There you go. Exactly. Walleye and wild rice.
Oh my gosh!
And,
yeah. But there is
morel
so much,
mushrooms.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So we're missing that coast here. But
Yeah.
So her journey on this and being described in the book that she's this 11-year-old she has this incredible palate. She's exceptional in what she can taste. And do your friends have that sort of palate? Because I find that amazing that these incredible chefs can taste the variances and the subtleties in so many food and ingredients. I just find it really incredible.
Yeah, I think they do. And I also have a friend who's a sommelier who helped me with some of the wine pairings.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm a big wine fan myself, but she's one of those people that could drink a glass of wine and tell you the varietal and the origin, and it blows me away. I can't do it, and I consider myself reasonably knowledgeable about wine, but I have not developed that talent.
Right.
And also to what extent I'm not sure. It's a talent or a God-given skill.
Right. Or it could probably be a curse when you have to eat terrible things or drink
right.
terrible wine, right?
I know.
Right.
You taste it too intensely.
Yeah.
Like I taste every grape that went into this, and they're all bad.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So where does your foodie interest start? How old were you?
Oh wow, high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I grew up in a house that didn't really emphasize fine dining or fine cuisine.
Right.
We ate for comfort and convenience.
Yeah.
But what inspired my exploration of food was a travel bug, actually.
Oh, really?
I really wanted to travel and see the world growing up. And I couldn't afford it. I was working at a Sam Goody at the mall, and I had access to my mom's Volkswagen Golf, and that was it. So I couldn't see Italy, but I could go to an Italian restaurant. I could go to an Ethiopian restaurant, a Thai restaurant, and I wanted to eat the obscure foods of the world. And Minneapolis and St. Paul had at least one or two of everything. Yeah, I had my first sushi there, first Ethiopian, Thai, Indian, teppanyaki, Greek food. I went to a Jewish deli for the first time there. Like every kind of most food experiences in terms of a style of ethnic cuisine I had for the first time as a teenager through just seeking it out and doing it as a shorthand for travel, but eventually it became the motive to travel. Later on, when I developed the means to travel, the primary motivation became, I'm going to eat something here that I can't get anywhere else.
So in this book, and again, no spoilers, but there's family secrets in this. Yeah, and we don't want to give them away. And some of it has to do with Eva's mother, Cynthia, and things that are kept from her because she really doesn't know much about her mother growing up and what happens, and sort of that. But we don't want to give anything away what happens in the book. But what is it about family secrets that make such compelling narrative and story when you're talking about writing fiction?
Well, some of it's the dramatic irony for the reader. It's always kind of nice as a reader to know something that the characters don't and see how it's all going to come together.
Right, yeah.
But it's also something that's very universal, Unless we're extremely rare, we're from a family. And also, unless we're extremely rare, the family's got secrets. And I think there's something for everybody in a book about family secrets. I think we see aspects of ourselves also in the people keeping the secrets and not divulging.
So this book, there's sadness, there's happiness, there's humor, there's how do you balance those things? I always find that such a skill. So nothing goes over, nothing's overdone, but it's just a wonderful balance through the whole book. I mean, how long did it take you to craft this novel?
Yeah, I wrote the first draft in just under a year.
Wow.
I've got a notepad in my bag that has a list of what I worked on every day.
Yeah.
And I added it up at the end, and it was 364 days. But that was pretty steady. That was pretty steady work. And then that also does not count the revisions and the edits.
Sure.
Sure. Absolutely. But once I got going, I was pretty focused. However, I did throughout 3 of the first 4 chapters I wrote. It took me a little while to, as I implied earlier, work away from the dinner party structure specifically. And in doing so, there were some false starts. But I think once I realized whose story I was telling, that story just came out of me.
Supper clubs actually supper clubs back when in the 30s and 40s, and Wisconsin had a whole supper club kind of thing, and I think Minnesota too, around certain lakes. And talking about, they sort of made a comeback, and the dinner that takes place at the end of the book, without spoilers, it's a very expensive dinner.
Yeah.
A very expensive dinner.
Yeah.
But there's a whole new movement in cities and other places about having these supper clubs where these young chefs are cooking this incredible courses for you for a dinner, where it's sort of an invite-only kind of situation.
Yeah.
So that to me is such an interesting phenomenon. I know some of it started in Brooklyn with some of the stuff, the early stuff with these supper clubs.
Yeah.
And so is it happening? It has to be happening up in the Twin Cities.
Oh, it has to be.
And of course, what Eva ends up, she does, when she leaves there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah,
So have you been to a lot of them yourself?
I've been to a few in Los Angeles, where they're quite popular.
Right.
Yeah. And it's great that you also bring up the traditional supper club. When writing this book, I was also interested in visiting those places.
Right.
I still want to go to the first salad bar in the world, which is in Plover, Wisconsin, at a place called the Sky Club, which was an old supper club.
So some of the supporting characters, and Will Prager in the book, he's probably one of the more normal of your characters, or some of them.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of depth to him.
Oh, thanks.
So tell me where his sort of character comes from, and is it part you?
Oh, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was a really dramatic and lovelorn teenager.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was also into music big time, as Will is, and was constantly contriving soundtracks to situations in my life and playing music during like great moments of overwrought emotional longing or despair. There was always music playing, and I would always think of what was happening in my life in terms of a song or an album. Yeah, and so it was a lot of fun to write a character like that who saw the world through the filter of music. Yeah.
Which I think there's a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
So talking about your interest in food, you said in high school. So what is your earliest recollection of wanting to be a writer? Because you've been in publishing for a while, but do you remember that earliest recollection and maybe that first piece, like, look what I did, kind of thing?
Yeah, my first piece, unfortunately, wasn't an original piece. My mom caught me written by Ryan Stradal in the inside of Richard Scarry's Cars and Trucks and Things That Go. I liked that book so much, I tried to take credit for it. And she was like, that's not what you do. You write your own book. You don't just get to write your name in something, take ownership of something because you love it, even though there is a sense of that.
Well, finding Goldbug.
Yes, exactly. I found the gold bug on every page. So therefore, I wrote this, But it's funny. There's an emotional bridge there. I love something so much, I feel like I wrote this. This is me.
See, isn't that, but that's what books are supposed to do.
Yes,
though.
exactly.
You have to take ownership.
Exactly.
Of that. Oh, that's great. I love that.
And later on, I got into dinosaurs, and my favorite dinosaur book at the time was Dinosaurs of North America by Helen Roney Sattler, and I wrote her. And she wrote back.
Cool.
And that to me was like when a writer became like a real person. I was like, oh, wow, this author isn't just an alien on another planet, but someone who responded to a fan letter and wrote a personal letter.
Yeah. Well, I have a feeling you're that same kind of author. You will be responding to your readers too. So this book to me was very visual. And I know that you have been an editor and you've been a producer in Hollywood on some reality shows like The Deadliest Catch and
Ice Road Truckers.
Oh yeah. And
Storage Wars, Texas.
Right. So how did that experience? How did that inform your fiction writing?
I think it's extremely useful. When you're putting a reality show together, it's a lot of editing. It's a lot of winnowing down, and that's a very useful process creatively. For Deadliest Catch, for example, they shoot thousands of hours of footage per episode, and you've got to plumb through it to determine what the best 43 possible minutes are out of an entire week or a couple weeks worth of just unedited, raw tape. And it develops certain storytelling skills, absolutely. You develop an instinct for the necessary. Yeah, you start to look at every line for its ultimate purpose. It may not always appear this way when you watch a show like that, when you watch Storage Wars, but every spoken line in those shows is scrutinized.
Right.
Yeah, nothing.
So there's nothing wasted.
Nothing wasted. No.
Right. So that experience, and along with what you're doing now, you're an acquisitions editor.
Yeah.
And then you're also a fiction editor.
Yeah.
So those experiences, what is it like? Are you critical on yourself now that you've written this novel? And are you going to treat some of the people you edit a little differently now that you've been through this experience yourself and worked with an editor? So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
If anything, I think I'm more compassionate. Yeah, yeah. I think when I was younger, I might have been a little harder on the slush piles. When I was working my way up, when I was also being rejected and frustrated.
Sure.
But I think also with maturity, it's not just with happening to have a book out, but also as you get older, and you spend more time, reading and being in the company of writers. I feel a lot more, sympathetic and empathetic and just compassionate towards other writers.
Right. So I want to ask you about the recipes, where they came from. And I know you acknowledge your mom in the acknowledgments in the book. So tell us a little bit about those two things and how they're connected.
Absolutely. 5 of the 8 recipes in the book are inspired by recipes from my great-grandmother's cookbook out of First Lutheran Church in Hunter, North Dakota. I had the 1984 edition. I also have the 1969 edition, but the recipes in that edition are a lot more vague.
Yeah.
They say stuff like cook until done.
Right.
Or there will be like a souffle recipe and the eggs aren't listed in the recipe because, hello, it's obvious.
Or there's no temperature for the oven
right,
setting.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or there's no time. Yeah, like very key things are missing because, frankly, it was compiled by people who knew what they were doing. Like,
well, they intuitively did it.
Yes.
They didn't need the
yeah,
step-by-step.
And also probably for a community that, hey, we already had our own recipes. Like, we won't necessarily be we're not going to break this book out every time we're going to make something,
Right.
But that said, I really wanted to root Eva in the Midwestern culinary tradition. So it was important for me to use authentic recipes, authentic farm recipes.
No, I think the recipes are on. And the thing is, I know probably everyone asks you, are they real, authentic recipes? And they absolutely are.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
really
they're
wonderful ones.
Time-tested for decades.
Yeah.
They're unchanged.
Yeah. So tell us a little about what you have in the works now, because this book is so wonderful. We're not sure we can wait for the next one.
Oh, boy.
So tell us a little bit what you're working on now.
I did sell my second book, and I've started working on it. I'm about 80 pages in. It's set in the Midwest, and I'm afraid that's all I can say right now.
Okay.
But it's another Midwestern book.
Okay. You don't need to tell us. You don't need to tell us.
Okay.
So I end these interviews with a little quiz. So you know all the answers. So sort of lightning round, whatever comes to your mind first. Okay.
I love it already.
Okay. What was your favorite book when you were fairly young?
A Field Guide to Dinosaurs. Yeah.
Okay.
That and Dinosaurs in North America. Those 2 books.
Okay. How about something you had to read when you were at Northwestern that still has stayed with you?
Jorge Luis Borges. Yeah.
Oh.
Collected fictions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How about a book? Any book you've read your entire life, you've been an evangelist for. You could not tell enough people they had to read it, besides your own.
Julius Knipple, Real Estate Photographer Stories by Ben Catchor. Yeah. He's a New York-based graphic novelist, and it's really underrated portrayals of urban life in kind of a fictional New York, but rapidly vanishing New York, like the New York of the 50s and 60s, of dairy cafeterias. And yeah, it's really charming.
Okay, favorite book that you've edited, or don't you like to say?
Oh, yeah, I can say. Neon Green by Margaret Wappler, who's a native of Oak Park.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
It's her first novel. I'm so happy to edit it.
Okay, very cool. Okay, what would you call a guilty pleasure read?
Well, right now I'm reading Ball 4 by Jim Bouton, or Boughton, I'm not sure how to say his name.
Yeah.
And I'd never read it before, and I think it's great. It's my airplane reading, and I'm devouring it.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about, we're going to do a little supper club, a dinner here.
Okay.
If you could invite 3 people, alive or dead, who would those 3 be, and what would be on the menu?
Yeah, it's funny. The first 3 people came to mind. Oh, Mom, Dad, and my brother.
What are you going to have to eat?
Oh, wow, this is a lot easier. I would want fish. Probably walleye. Peas. Yeah,
peas.
Peas. Love peas. Yeah. Root beer. Yeah, I'd love to have some root beer. And fish, peas, and root beer.
And what's for dessert?
Favorite meal in the world. Oh, I'd say lemon sorbet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a good one. Okay. And what are you reading now? Anything you've read recently or reading now that you've really loved?
An Iowa author named Kate DeSherry's first book, The Fine Art of Effing Up. I'll put it that way.
Okay. 100% A+. Alex Trebek would be so proud of you for this quiz. So.
Oh, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
But J. Ryan, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me, and congratulations on Kitchens of the Great Midwest. We can't wait to get this into 1 million readers' hands. So
You're welcome.
come back and see us next time.
Yeah, thank you.
What a great conversation with debut novelist J. Ryan Stradal and his new book, Kitchens of the Great Midwest. You will absolutely adore this novel and it'll make you hungry too. Thanks for joining me on Authors Reveal.